Welcome to Cosmic Roadmap. I'm your host, Melissa Lamport, Reiki astrogeo guide and best-selling author. Have you ever wondered where in the world you should be? This podcast is about bridging cultures and helping the endless wanderer find their purpose and place in the world. Hear stories from digital nomads, avid travelers, and aspiring globetrotters, and learn how they discovered where they were destined to be and build their legacy. If you're curious about astrogeography and where you're meant to be on the planet, go to cosmicroadmap.com to download your free passport to purpose. My special guest today is Jess Aycock. She is a women's empowerment coach for the kink curious, established kinksters, and sex workers. We met through our mutual mentor, Gabby Braddock of No Plan B Consulting about 2 years ago. It feels like forever, but we bonded over kinks like Shibari. I was really into Shibari about 2 years ago. And I even, did a few conferences and we instantly connected over that. And we've been friends ever since. So welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been such a good experience and I cannot wait to dive in.
Yes. So how has life been since our astrogeo session? We actually had it back in February. And I know that
only February?
Right? It feels like forever, but it was like this past February.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. So man, I thought it was like October of last year, but I feel like time has just gone by so fast, but also clearly has not. Not much time has gone past.
I know.
Life has been really good. There's been a lot of huge shifts, a lot of changes, a lot of just getting much more clear on what I'm kind of doing. I think, that's kind of something that I've always struggled with is like, what am I doing? I feel like I kind of flip from one thing to another sometimes and can't make a decision, but have a hard time like embodying that decision. And so this has just been the last, I guess, only 4 months have really been chock full of self-discovery from evolution and just like really getting clearer on what I'm doing.
Well, even when we first met, you were into astrology. So you were doing a lot of astrology readings along with your therapy, right? And now,
right.
But you're a little bit of like your private life is like coming into the forefront,
yes.
which I love, because that's where our conversation started, right? Like a lot of times the stuff that we want to keep in the closet is what we're meant to work on. And I think the clients that are coming to you are really allowing you to see that, right? Because the universe sends you the universe sends you exactly what you need.
Exactly. And exactly the people that you need too. And I think when we first met, like you were the one who mentioned Shibari and I was just like, oh, yes. Oh my God. Like we're best friends immediately.
Like you get it.
And then I really kind of like backed off on that. And I wasn't doing it in my personal life either. And so that was part of it. Like I kind of backed off from my personal life with that. And then I was really focusing on what I thought was a niche that I wanted to be in. And I still love astrology. I think it's super effective in learning about yourself. I still use it all the time, but it wasn't really working for me to focus on that as a business.
Right.
And so, and as a clinical therapist, that really wasn't feeding me either. So I've kind of moved through a lot of different roles in my life, from, journalist right after college to then going into my master's program and then becoming a clinical social worker to now kind of being like, that doesn't really fit either, and moving into coaching. Then in the coaching realm, moving from, astrology to now more to general coaching to more very specific kinks. Let's talk about sex. Let's talk about the things that you are reading about. I mean, if you're on TikTok, you're on Book Talk, all the spicy books that are out there. And there's a lot of people who are being kind of exposed to stuff that they're like, ooh, why does this kind of turn me on?
Yeah.
And they don't have any place to really go for it. So
right, because it feels so taboo, right? And they can't just go to their friends and like, hey, like, what do you think about this? Because then they'll probably think, different of them or feel ostracized in some way.
Right. Yeah, it
Yeah.
definitely depends. It depends on who the friend is. But yeah. And so it's, I remember when I was starting with kinks and kind of just like this was many, many, many years ago. And I was like, I don't even know where to go. I don't know what to do. Like I'm Googling stuff and I'm coming up with things. And there were some really great websites at the time,
Yeah.
but there's not a ton. I don't want to say there's not a ton of education out there, because there is, but there's not a ton of people that you can really just like word vomit explore this with. And I feel like that's kind of my specialty is
And
word
that's the
vomit.
beautiful thing, right? Where you are a few steps ahead. And for someone that's just, like dipping their toes in that world, it's amazing because you understand where they're at. And I was also that person where I'm also kind of, just exploring. I'm into Shibari, which if anybody's listening, if you're wondering what that is, it's Japanese rope play. And it's all about communication. When I first stepped into this world, I learned about it. I went to the Museum of Sex, and that's where I learned about Shibari. And I'm like, this is so beautiful. So it was like,
it really is.
Yeah, it was like people just getting tied up in this artistic way. So I fell in love with the beauty of the art of Shibari. And then eventually I got into a conference. It was called Queer Ropes, like based out of Germany. And that is when I started meeting all these Shibari, I guess you would call them practitioners, like people that practice with Shibari. And the conference was all about communication, and that's what I love, the psychology of it, right? The back and forth, the consent. And it was just really beautiful because even though you are putting each other in these difficult or compromising positions, you're having these open conversations. So I just love that all the discussions were all pretty much about how do you communicate what you want, your desires. So that's what I got out of it. It was less about the artistry or like which knot do you do here. It was more about the open communication, the psychology of it all. That was the most intriguing part and what I got out of those conferences.
And I think that's you've hit the nail on the head, because any kind of non-traditional relationship, any kind of kink, any kind of any relationship is 100% communication has to be happening. And I think in our society, we don't know how to communicate well. We have no idea how to say what we want. We have no idea how to set boundaries. We have no idea how to really like ask for the things that we need, not even what we want, but what we actually need. And that is one of the things that I love about the kink community, is that they are so focused on communication first.
Yes.
Because the more people you add to a relationship, it's not about the sex. A lot of the time, it's not about the sex. The thing that is the sexiest and the most the thing that turns people on the most is the communication. And I think that's where people just kind of like get lost in it. They're afraid to go that way because, you know what I mean? Like they're afraid to get into any kind of kinks or explore it,
or the ethical non-monogamy, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because if people don't know, like I'm in an open relationship, like ethically non-monogamous, and that requires a lot of communication rather than going off and cheating with someone and then coming back like, oh, sorry, like I really like this person. No, like it just starts off and you're just very honest with each other, because there's attractions and desires that should be explored and in a very compassionate way rather than in a shameful way. So that's the beautiful part of the ethical non-monogamy, where you don't necessarily even have to be in a relationship. Like it doesn't have to be sexual. It could be strictly platonic. Right. But some people in the heteronormative relationships even feel ashamed to go out with someone just as friends because, it may turn into something else. But being in the space that I'm in, like open, it allows me to explore, it could be platonic or romantic, but in very like fluid ways, because that's how we are as energetic beings.
And I think that happens because I was one of those people who got so jealous. It was wild. Like it's so weird to look at myself in the past, like when
I was jealous as well.
Yeah.
And it was the insecurity. It was
it was so bad. It was so bad. I was the one who was like sneaking looks at his phone, and he was cheating. And so it was like, we were like not on the same page at all.
Yeah.
And it's like, had we been able to have the conversation and just be all like, hey, this is what's actually going on, that relationship may have been completely different. But we can't get there until we've done the personal work to get past, to become secure with ourselves and what we have to offer. And I think that was one of those things where, you know, as relationship coach after relationship coach after relationship coach, when you're single and dating and you're in your 30s, because I'm now 42, and people are like, how do you, like, you're 30 and you're not married yet, or you're 40 and you aren't, whatever, that we start seeking that out. Like, and every relationship coach is like, you have to love yourself first. You have to love yourself first. You have to love yourself first. And everybody thinks it's bullshit. It's not. Like, it's the truth, but nobody knows how to do it.
but that's the reality, where like someone is not going to complete you, right? Like you,
right, exactly.
You already have to go into that relationship, you know, whatever it is, friendship, complete, like not wanting to, you know, like that's not going to be your other half. Like that's
right. And then as soon as you do that, this whole non-monogamy thing starts to not be so scary, because you're secure in what you have to offer.
Exactly.
And you know that if the other person is seeking something else out, it has nothing to do with you. Not a single thing.
Yeah. How did you get into like ethical non-monogamy? Because for me, it was this weird situation where we were attracted to a mutual friend, and I almost felt like I was losing this friend, because there was definitely a closer relationship with her and my partner. And that's where it all kind of started, where I felt super jealous. I'm like, you either stop talking to this person, so we can like continue on our, you know, happy heteronormative ways, or we open up our relationship, right? And the opening up of the relationship, that's when it allowed for these honest, raw conversations, just crying. Like it was months and months, probably a whole year of just diving deep and healing, because it's the insecurities that you have to work past, right? You know, am I not attractive, or like, is that why you're talking to this person? And it has nothing to do with any of that. You know, a lot of times it's just this person wants to be seen by another person, right? They love that feeling, or that different connection that they have with that other person that they might not get with you. So
right. Yeah. And I think too, like, one of the things that really was talked about a lot when I first was looking into just open relationships and researching and polyamory and all of these things was, you know, different people can fill different roles for you. And so in a heteronormative relationship, we are so focused on that other person fulfilling everything for us, filling all of the roles, that's why we're not satisfied, because that other person literally cannot do that. It is not within their power. Very, very few people can do that, right? And so I think it's really an interesting take on it, of talking about what do these other people fill for me? Like, how do these other people fill my cup? And not to say that this other person doesn't want to, but they just can't. It's not within their power. And that doesn't mean that it's bad. And I think that's the other thing, is like, if somebody can't do something for us, we think that it's wrong. And it's like, no, they literally just can't do it. Like, you're not going to ask a dog to be a cat. Like, your dog can't be your cat.
Yeah.
Why are we trying to make people be or do something that they can't do, you know?
Exactly.
And so for me, it was that really started the gears turning, you know, and this was probably like 6 or 7 years ago, that just kind of started turning of, okay, hold on a second. And then the dating world is terrible. People don't know what they want. Nobody is being honest with anybody. And so I was going through some really terrible interactions with people, not even like relationships, but just interactions, meeting people and them saying, oh, well, this is what I want. And then 2 weeks later they ghost. And I'm like, what the fuck, people? Like, what are you doing? And so that was like a huge growth again for me, of this, it's not about me. This person just doesn't know what the fuck they want.
Right.
And so, even now, after now being in a relationship that is very much normal, because I call him my boyfriend, but we don't, and we're obviously partners, but we don't like have a lot of, we don't use the labels with each other, really. Like I use the label because it's easier for people to understand his relationship to me.
Right.
But we don't really use the label with each other. And so we also are geographically separated most of the time. And so it's very much like, if you want to be doing these things, then I have to have the ability to also be doing these things, And so that was kind of a big discussion for us of, being geographically separated and being a long distance relationship for most of our relationship. How do we ethically continue with our relationship, but possibly explore other things too?
Exactly.
And not feel guilty about it, and not feel shame about it, and not be upset about it, because we each have our own past and our own relationships in the past that have kind of fucked us in the head for those things,
Yeah, it's so true. And it reminds me of back in my 20s, I think when I was like 25. Yeah, my partner went back to Malaysia, and it was a 3.5 year long, long distance relationship. Nothing ever happened. And I remember it was nothing, because I was in a relationship, right? Like I couldn't possibly like go outside of that relationship, and he didn't do anything either. So yeah, we were just kind of in this weird space, and it wasn't until our 30s that we're like, this can be a possibility. And he was even scared. He was always like very open, with me to be, just go explore, because he knew that I was queer. And it was really beautiful that he was not jealous. He was just like, go. But I felt the shame of, but I'm in a relationship, right? Not knowing what poly and what open relationships were all about. But the universe sends us people, right? Like we had some friends that were in an open relationship, a very like beautiful like poly relationship, and I was like, wow, this is something that people do in a very compassionate, loving way. So yeah, it's been a beautiful journey, because as you keep on stepping into that and stepping out of the shame, right? Because when you're in the shame, then people like, it just mirrors back to you. Because I remember being in spaces where there was a lot of phobia, like they didn't want to hear me out. Like they're like, wait, you're bi? Like, I don't even want to talk to you. And I was like, whoa, what? So yeah, it's definitely been a very interesting journey. But going back to the places that we looked at on your astrogeo map, like, with this, I guess, open relationship, does it allow you to travel more freely? Because it allows me to travel freely now, because even though I am married, I can still, bounce around different places and be open to other relationships, and my partner still being okay with it. And it's probably the same for you.
Yeah. So what's really interesting is my partner travels. That's his job.
All the time.
He travels. Yeah. And so I actually view this as being better for both of us, in that being allowed to travel more together. And I think that being able to not put the restrictions on the relationship, which I think is the biggest part. Like, it's not about saying we're in an open relationship. It's about saying relationship is our own, and we get to determine what the rules are.
Exactly.
And nobody else gets to decide what's right or wrong for us. And so once I kind of came to that decision of like, we get to make the rules, fuck everybody else, and let's just do us and what feels good for us, and obviously have constant communication about that. I think that's actually us closer together in a way that wouldn't have otherwise.
Yeah.
And so it's really interesting. Like the travel thing is, I've never really been one to travel alone. And so it actually, I feel like, makes it easier for us to travel together, because that's something now that he's like, hey, I want to take you these places. I want you to come with me. Like, and now it's kind of like, okay, well, how do I figure out the rest of my life in order to make those things happen?
Right.
That's the big part.
Yeah. And where you said that you started as a journalist and moved into social work, right? And then therapist, and now you're working with more like sexual empowerment, right? In that realm. So how do you see that evolution? Do you see yourself, traveling abroad, or kind of staying where you are and working with local communities?
I don't feel a super big tie to my local community. I love my space here. I love the people around me, but I do not feel like this is home base. So I definitely view it as being more of either traveling other places and continuing to be able to do this work freely throughout the world, or just finding a new home base that feels a lot more me, I guess is what I mean,
And we were even chatting about, what was it, Australia, and you had a recent friend, right, that their mom went to Australia. Like, all the synchronicities started popping up after our session.
So many. Yeah. I found out one of my clients' parents is Australian, and they go to Australia all the time. And there was something else. I have several clients who travel a lot. I have another client who's going to Spain. I have another one who just went to Italy.
And you had so much energy. Yeah. Like, so much energy in Europe too. Like,
yes. Yeah.
Like the whole gamut.
Europe is definitely someplace that I want to go. And again, like, I feel like I'm one of those people where I am just like adventure adjacent. Like, everybody's on these adventures and I'm just kind of like associated to them. Like, oh, that's so cool, So I'm hoping to kind of get to the point where maybe we can be doing our own adventures. But yes, so in the future, that's definitely way more travel, probably in the next year or two, I'm hoping ramp up and get to be exploring.
Awesome. And what places do you see yourself going? So
yeah. Australia is still tops of my list. I don't know why, but I do still love, like, the idea of going to Bali. Like, I don't know what it is about that place.
You had your sun energy there. Yeah. And it's MC. So like midheaven. So it's all about like the future and your career. So in terms of your career, like, there would be like a major spotlight on you. And because you've moved into this new realm of like sexual empowerment, I think there may be something there in Southeast Asia. Yeah.
Have a little solo trip to Bali or something like that.
Because even I think your line even goes up near Thailand. If I look at it, let me see.
Yeah, I think Thailand was definitely one that's always been I've been drawn to as well. And a friend of mine originally, right before that, she was supposed to be doing a yoga trip to Thailand. And I was like,
was it in the Koh Samui area?
I don't remember, because it didn't end up happening.
Okay.
But it was also like right on my birthday. And I was like, okay, all right. So we're going to have to figure this out. But then the pandemic happened and everything. And so now it went away. But I feel like that, again, was like this very synchronistic, hey, Jess, pay attention here, kind of thing. So Thailand is definitely on my list as well.
Yeah, you have Thailand, and also a lot of energy through Cambodia and Vietnam too. You had that the Venus, like the Venus circle right over Hanoi. So you may be working with sex workers abroad in some capacity.
Right. And I think that is such a interesting, like, sex work in general, I feel like has gotten such a bad rap for so long. And I feel like now it's starting to become a little more mainstream, a little more, a little less taboo, and I mean, we have OnlyFans, we have, other types of subscription type services for individuals who just want to explore that, which if that is your thing, go for it, because I think that is so empowering in a lot of ways. And I just think that there's a lot of people who don't understand sex workers. And so as a therapist with my therapy background, I want to make sure that there's people who understand that there are people here for them. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't want people to feel excluded. And I know that sex work has such a very much like tarnished aura to it for a lot of clinical social workers or clinical therapists, or like that's not something that people tend to be all like, oh yeah, this is what I do. Does that make sense?
And yeah, so because they try to pathologize it or like make it into, something that's wrong when
it's not. It's
not. Yeah. And when I did that conference, I realized that many of them, they were from other parts of Europe or maybe the UK, and they had to travel to places where it was legal, like Germany.
Yeah.
Which is kind of sad, where, you couldn't practice in your own, place of origin, but that's the reality.
I mean, we know people here who do that, who travel to, may live in one city and travel to an entirely different state in order to strip at a club there because nobody knows them, you know, or, they have a reputation to quote unquote protect from this side of themselves. And I really like that hurts my heart so much, because this is part of who you are. And like, why are we trying to hide that so much? And so I think that's really kind of the thing that I want to do with sex workers, is particularly new sex workers or people who are looking to get into that, is, how do I tell my family this? How do I get support from this? How do I be okay with saying this is what I do when everyone's telling me I shouldn't be doing this, that this is a bad thing?
So crazy. So how can people work with you? I know that you've transitioned into this space. Are there one-on-ones, group programs that you have? How can people reach you and work with you?
Yeah. So right now I'm doing strictly one-on-one. Everything is essentially like an application process. So the best way is to go to my website. Have to think about what my website is.
Oh, your website will be in the show notes, good. So you can get that. Yeah.
I had to tell somebody my email the other day, and I'm like, wait, is that my email?
Right.
So if you go onto my website, there is a form that you can schedule a time with me to talk. It's completely free. We have 30 minutes to just kind of like bounce, get acquainted with each other, see what's kind of going on. If I am not the right fit for you, I will absolutely make recommendations on maybe somebody else who might be a better fit. I don't want people to like kind of pre-screen themselves out. I would love to just like sit and chat and be able to help you kind of through whatever the process is, versus feel like somebody's going, oh no, that's not for me. Let's talk about it first. Like, let's talk about it first. And then
see if we're a good fit. Yeah.
Right. Because, it's not the kink community and sex work and communication. Like that's not all we do. So if there's other things that are going on in your life as well. So, a lot of the things I pull from a lot of my therapy background on just general levels on how do we be better human beings. So, and how do we take care of ourselves in a big way? Self-care is still a huge thing, regardless of how many relationships you're in. You still have to take time for yourself, and that can be really difficult. Right. So yeah, let's talk first before you.
No, you bring up. That's not me. Yeah, you bring up a good point, because I know that you're all about self-care, but when you're introducing more people into your relationship, it's even more crucial. So I thank you so much for being on. And I love that the conversations that I'm having on my Venus line, my love line, happened to be like yesterday. My interview was with a sexual empowerment coach. And now it's beautiful that you've transitioned into, very similar work as well. So I thank you for your honesty and for being on today. So remember, lineage goes beyond your ancestors. You are meant to connect to the cosmos so you may finally find your cosmic family. Until next time. Thank you for listening to Cosmic Roadmap. If you would like to book a session with me to explore your own cosmic roadmap and chart your next destination in business, love, and life, then head over to cosmicroadmap.com.